Okay, let's make our usual start. Just sitting for a few moments, finding a comfortable position to sit in. One that leaves you upright, but without having to strain for that. So you may notice I'm forward in my chair, even my weight going into my feet. So I feel the support from feet, hips, chair. Really, every time we start, we're sort of repeating the initial experience of Tai Chi, where we start to go through basic ideas, posture, rooting down, alignment, focusing your attention, and so on and so forth. These are the foundations for everything else that happens in Tai Chi. Even the weight is another one. So there's various things which we bring to the surface, which we practice and allow to sort of sit in the background. And mostly we don't notice them when we're doing the exercises until they get lost. So, you know, there's a change in the feel of the movement. Just like if you're driving a car or you're riding a bike or lots of things really, you get used to the feel of something and then it doesn't feel quite right. And that's when you go back and you think, you're walking down the road, suddenly you think, you notice that there's a shoe loose, and then you realise the shoelace is coming down, so you do it up. In many ways, these are the things that we're practicing for. So we begin a process of developing them and doing the exercises and everything that comes in Tai Chi is a way of cultivating and improving our ability to bring those qualities into the movement and by extension into our lives. So we start as we started in the first class, and this is always how I would start. And when I practice in the morning, these are the sort of things that I want to bring into place. And sometimes they will be the things that I focus on totally. Other times I'll be sort of like move my weight and so on and so forth. Maybe move on from that, but never losing touch with these things. And for the most part, they are the things that really bring the benefits. So part of the challenge is, can we bring these qualities into our lives? You know, all the ups and downs and complexities of our life. It's worth giving some time to this seated posture and thinking about how it feels. The term that I always fall back on, the Chinese term is Zhongding. We translate that as central equilibrium. And there's various qualities that I would associate with central equilibrium. Having a sense of how I can arrive at them technically, but also just getting that feel, which again, you know, which may go at some point, probably will go at some point, which I can then begin to come back to. So just sitting for a moment to remind yourself of how it can feel. And rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Quite light, but rapid, just noting the sensations. And a sort of slight sting perhaps, but not an uncomfortable thing. And then work up over your head and neck. And from one shoulder. And then arm. The other side. Upper part of your chest. And belly. And behind your legs. Good way of getting to warm your body up, and a good way of just bringing your attention into your body, noticing what is going on. That's very much a foundation of what we're doing. Feet out, everything that we do is, I suppose you could call it psychophysical. It's never just a mechanical physical movement. It's never purely of the mind. It's never purely to do with a notion of energy. These three aspects overlap and support each other. And where they overlap, if you think about a Venn diagram, interconnected circles, where all three circles overlap, is the space where we practice Tai Chi, and where we, again, trying to bring that into our daily lives. So letting your weight drop down into the chair. Letting your thoughts go to that feeling of contact with the chair, feeling the weight of your body. Maybe noting in passing areas which don't seem to be going through this process of yielding to the pull of gravity. But noticing those places where there's some kinds of change, and sometimes we might like that in our breathing, or maybe in a tightness in our shoulder beginning to drain away, or any number of things. So having a grounded attention in this way gives you the ability to just look out, to observe what is going on in your body, and indeed the whole area around you. Draw your feet back, come back to the upright position. Take a few moments just to think about how you're being supported. So, as I said, ideally you'll be a little bit forwards. Just bear in mind that there's always a difference between our aspiration, the sort of like theoretical ideal, and where we actually are. Nothing should be forced. If you try this for just for a few moments, getting a little bit of weight, about a third of your weight in your feet. So there's a bit of support from your feet and your legs. To the extent that, no, I'm not going to demonstrate this, but if I were to lift up my feet and tuck them under, I'd probably roll out the chair. I'm not going to demonstrate. But then there's also your weight sinking back through lower back, hips, and buttocks, and into the chair. So this offers the foundation, the root, because you may be able to get a sense of your weight sinking down. And so we build the movement up from the ground. And in doing so, recognize that we're training ourselves to do that, to bring our attention to the ground, to bring our attention to our feet, and to build on that, rather than to have too much of our attention on the upper part of the body. If you do happen to feel that maybe you're getting a bit tight in your back, in the long term, as your back conditions and as your sense of being supported and rooting down improves, that should lessen. But don't force yourself to hold this position. If you were to sit back and go into this stance a little bit forwards, you wouldn't get the same feeling of support from your legs. It's not as obvious, although it's still there. And you may just feel the back of the chair supporting the lower part of your back. You might want to be somewhere in between. Then feeling that your back supports the front of your body, and I think this is where we find that the chair-based exercises can actually point us at a quality which we want to try and reproduce when we're standing. We want the root when we're standing, we want the alignment, we want the feeling of support. We also want to feel that we don't have to hold a shape with the front of our body. I think with this slight angle forwards, it's a bit clearer perhaps than when we're standing. And as you begin to lose some of that tightness in your body, And that comes with a growth of awareness that you're still supported. You don't need that tightness. A further level of support from deeper within your body begins to make it safe now. And then just in this position, slowly turning your head a little bit, not too far. You don't want to put any pressure on the side of your neck. You just want to feel that you're beginning to immobilize the muscles in the area of your neck and shoulders a little bit, allowing the blood and the energy to begin to move. So if you go too far and the muscles tighten up, that's less likely to happen. So it's really quite a small movement. And then place your hands in front of your shoulders, pushing your elbows around, feeling the movement in chest, the upper back as well, maybe your sides. Developing the skill of observation and listening to your body. And then going forwards. And down to your sides and out a little bit, just rotating the shoulders. Raising your hands, and this time let your wrist bend a little bit, bringing your fingers around, full circle. And back the other way. Let your hands rest. And just feeling the bones at the base of your pelvis, sitting bones, and they're sometimes referred to. Thinking of them as like the rockers on the pair on a rocking chair, and just tilting forwards a little bit more, so more of your weight goes into your legs, and then press down into the floor to push yourself back. You might find it helpful just a few times to gently raise your heels as you go forwards. There's a stronger feeling of pressure in the balls of your feet. Lower them down as you go back. You don't want to keep the calf muscles under that kind of contraction. And you don't want to do this every time you move weight. This is just to give that slightly stronger sense of your weight going into your body. Eventually, you want to be able to do this with your feet flat down, just very aware of the way that your weight is moving. The other aspect, of course, is as you go forwards, gravity is pulling your hips down. So it feels like somebody's taken hold of the top of your trousers and is pulling you back. But the combination will bring you upright without too much strain in the upper part of your body. But do notice whether you are, for instance, maybe pulling your head back or tightening your chest or shoulders. That's a very deeply ingrained habit in the mystics. If you turn in the middle of your body, you'll change the direction of the movement. So that's an intentional act, and all these movements are intentional. It's like the intention is an instruction relayed through the center of the body. In the other direction, noticing the significance of that small turn in the center. Moves you. And then by rolling your pelvis around, drawing your head and shoulders around in the smooth circle. And back the other way. Okay. So bringing those movements together in different combinations, I suppose you could think. Your hands drop down again, turn your hands palms, rotation in the shoulders. Easing forwards and rotating your arms, and then sit back. So most of the movement is going to be concerned with your weight. And if you look at this side view, you see that my arm is actually hanging below my shoulder. I'm not trying to move the arm forwards and backwards further at this stage. What the rotation does give you, is this sense of the arms just moving out just a little bit and then back in. So it's like a semicircle. And this can point you at a very important element in Tai Chi, that the movement is the whole body and from the ground beneath. So it's not this, not just the arm. And our perspective on the movement, our observations on the movement and our understanding of the movement embrace the whole body. You're using your feet and your hips. The pelvis is tilting. The shoulders are being moved, and there's a response in your back as a consequence. And your arms to complete the pattern. And changing this time, a little bit more active in your arms. And it starts by just leaving your hand behind as you go back and then letting your arms swing through. And then going forwards. If you imagine doing this in water, you'll get the right sort of resistance that just stops your arm from leading the movement. Do this on both sides. This is fisherman cast the net. Starting to just be aware perhaps of that wave-like flow through your body that comes from your hips forwards, drains down into your feet, and then from your feet back up into your body and down into your hips. One more time. Going forwards. This time, as you come back, just leaving the arms out there so that as your shoulders come up, your arms are pulled up slightly. And then imagine the ball beneath your arms. What you're going to be doing is imagine rolling the ball into the pitch. Begin to see we change not only the physical movement, but our perspective on it, the image that we use, perhaps, the common aspect of Tai Chi. Awareness of the changes within the body, especially those of you who've been doing this for some while. These are never just external movements. There's always a connection to changes and expansion and contraction, various pathways and patterns in our body, which eventually come to create the movement rather than another way about. That's just an ongoing transition, I think. So rolling the ball into your chest, do this one more time, coming through, bottom of the circle, coming up, and now turn your hands palm in, draw your elbows apart, feel how front of the body opens, and then going forwards, pressing your hands together, letting them drop down, you're just above your knees, pigeon spreads and spreads. The movement, expanding and contracting in chest and your upper back, it's quite a powerful feel. More time. And going into pushing wave. Don't be tempted to push with your arms. So basic movement, as you're new to this, is this, you see, it's that movement of our weight forwards and backwards. A little bit of pulling back and pushing forwards with the arms, but it isn't just thrusting your arms forwards. Again, as you become more familiar, this becomes more subtle. So rather than just pulling your arms back, as I come back, I get the expansion in the upper part of my body, pushing my elbows out. This is exaggerating that. As I start to go forward, chest contracts, drawing my elbows in, and that also helps to press the arms forwards. That is exaggerated, by the way. These are much more subtle movements, but maybe you can see that sense of a kind of almost horizontal curve of the shoulder. Yeah. So when you think about what's behind the movement, see, the weight is moving, and there's a tremendous energy, a tremendous power in that. And then there's that fluidity of the movement, that wave-like quality of the movement. That's complemented by the feeling in the chest and your ribs, the chest opens out, and then the chance to ease forwards, chest contracting, elbows coming in. Giving you this stronger feeling, this pushing way. You could feel as though you're pushing against it. Once more. Roll your fingers into a hollow fist. When you come back this time, your elbows stay in front of your hips. And then move forward, your arms rotate. Again, just watching from the side. If I was to just move my arms, then move this far. You see, at the end of the movement, my elbow is still a little bit bent. So I'm not thrusting right out. That would cause me to tighten up. Then when I move the weight as well, that can give me quite an enlargement of my range of movement. Then when you come forwards, uncurl your fingers, turn your hands so they're palm out, almost like you're doing the breaststroke, except the weight is going back. This movement finishes with again, chest opening, closing in. Your back lengthening and then contracting. The weight moving forwards and then backwards. All these movements just blending into one. Turning your hands palm down, polishing the table again, do that lengthening through your back and your spine, and then contracting, and then switching direction. One more time. Let your hands rest for a moment. These exercises, these initial exercises help us to become aware of the basic connections and patterns of movement, the flow of energy within the body, and how those interact with obviously the mechanics of the movement, the body itself, and with our mind, with our intentions. And again, these three blend in with each movement will have its own unique combination of. The same is true for the more vertical movements. It's a little bit trickier. You can feel when your weight's moving forwards and backwards, the pelvis is going around, how what's happening in the lower part of the body moves your arms for you. But here, it's not so clear. It's much more internalized, I think. So you start with an awareness of your feet and your hips, and awareness of the pull of gravity working down through the body. I'm going to offer you two ways of looking at this. They're complementary. One is perhaps a little bit subtler than another. One is to really focus on the mechanics of what we're going to be doing and thinking about the feet and the hips, gently pressing down through both of them at the same time. The same kind of thing you might expect to do if you're going to do it more strongly, if you're going to stand up, pushing from the hips, pushing from the legs, and so on and so forth. And that creates a gentle upward expanding move. Taking that a little bit more deeply to the body. We start with an awareness of the pull of gravity, in particular the way it's drawing our head, our shoulders, our upper body down into the center. You're sort of like blocked out. You won't, because your skeleton is there to continue to support you. Remember I said before about this inner support. And then what happens is you start to get a sense of compression here. Imagine there's a ball in that area of your belly and the hips. It gets compressed and then it expands. And as it expands, that's when you get the push downwards through feet and hips, and at the same time, the push upwards. Try those out, see to what extent they actually help you. Bring the hands around as though you're cradling the ball. So starting either with the intention to sort of press down gently as though you're standing up, or with the intention to feel that compression between, let's say, between waist and pelvis, with those bones of the sitting on the chair. Either way, and then feeling the push up that results from that coming up through your back, pushing your hands up, turning your hands over, now pressing down. Your whole body is engaged in one way or another. That includes your shoulders and your arms. We move our attention away from them because they can capture our attention too easily. But it doesn't mean that we're going to ignore them completely. So you're imagining lifting the ball, and you notice here my elbow is going out, like in Pigeon Spencer's wings. And then everything drops down, my elbows drop, and there's this press down through my hands. And then done in a nice, smooth, soft way as much as possible. Body expanding, yang, contracting. Movement up to the sides. And then this time, change into the movement, the wild goose. This image of the bird in flight, turning your hands out. As you feel that push up, let it push your arms away from your body. And that should draw your hands and your fingers up quite nicely. With a wild goose, and then parting these clouds, moving from this slightly more compact, drawn in stage to much more expansive stage, likened to the sun coming out from behind the clouds. And it's a gentle extension. We're not stretching. Stretching would lead us to a point where we're sort of locked in position. Stretching is a good thing to do, but it's not what we're doing. And we're not trying to lift our arms. So again, watching as I break this movement down, there's a push from feet, there's a push from hips, there's an expansion here in the belly, that movement, that energy coming up, and that pushes your elbows out. You continue to expand, and that brings your elbows and your hand down, and then pause again. Start the whole process. I think this movement lends itself very well to an understanding, not just of the particular pattern associated with this movement, but with the general feel of all of the system. Every movement has this aspect that is drawing in, pressing, focusing, however you can label it, followed by an expansion out, followed by contraction. So we begin to live in some kind of harmony to the patterns of movement and energy around us in our daily lives. One more time. Again, this exercise a little bit more complicated, but using the same principles. Letting your hands drop down, and the weight of your arms on your shoulders, focusing on your left side, doing the expansion, and once again pushing your elbow up, and then going down. On the other side, noticing any difference between one side of your body and another. Noticing that your attention needs to pass through the center of your body and then out to the periphery before you begin the next movement. And this focusing of our attention in this very close, deep way, as the outcome, one of the outcomes is, even if we don't feel that we can do it particularly well, then it's a difficult thing to do, and it's a skill that we develop in touch. If you haven't had time to do that, you can still benefit from the focusing of your attention, because that's where we get the most sense of stillness and calmness. When we do the other side, don't rush. You think about a wave coming up through the body, pushing your arm out. And when we begin to alternate from one side to another, it's not left, right, left, right, left, right. We have our attention in one side of the body. And then when the hand is dropped all the way down, we bring our attention to the center and that feeling of compression, and then on the other side. So one of the things that happens when we pay this close attention to what's happening within the body is there's a sense of slowing down, not necessarily in just in the speed of the movement, but in the sort of speed of our minds, we might say. Again, it's close attention that we make the effort towards. It doesn't necessarily have to sort of succeed in the way that I'm talking about it. Really helps to generate this sense of stillness and calmness that we associate with the art. And one more on each side. The stillness is strongly associated with the movement. It's the stillness within the movement. Bringing your hands to the center of your body and then extending upwards and out. So an awareness and a willingness to work with the subtleties of posture and alignment and root doesn't take you away from the energetic aspect of the art, but actually is a part of the same process. Remember, these three elements of body, mind, and energy overlap at a certain. There's an intention to move in a particular way. There's a structure that allows that movement. There's the movement itself that feeds back whether the intention, whether the structure are actually working. One more round of this. Extend one foot. Knees a little bit bent, but your heel is on the ground. Easing forwards, so you're scooping water up in your arms, coming back, and you're throwing the water back over your head. This is scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Or challenging physically, so just be careful with your back, go too far. Think about how you're coming upright. Feel that pull on your hips, drawing you up without straining in your back and your shoulders and neck. Something we want to try and bring into the standing movements in a few moments. And then fist in your hand, going forwards, lengthening through your back, just grasping the tiger's ears. Curve out slightly, like one of the earlier exercises, if you remember. And there's this little rotation, and you feel it really open in the chest and then the chest contracted. Change sides, bring that foot in, step out, scoop in the sea and look in the sky. And then grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. So, being ready to stand, rubbing your hands together, going back to this tapping exercise, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down on the shoulder and your arm. And the other side. And the legs. Your heels up to get the muscles of your legs working again. And circling. And the other way. Come to standing. So I mentioned this too, your hips dropping back, bringing your head upright. Just standing with your feet hip width apart and very carefully tilt your pelvis forward. So you kind of lean forwards, feel a bit hunched over. Try not to pull up like this. You're just straining in your back and your chest. I'm exaggerating now. Watch what I do. You can imagine the chair still behind me. And I let gravity bring my hips down. And look what happens. See how my head comes up. And when I do this, just try it very gently. Be careful of your back. Tilt the pelvis forwards. Then let your hips drop back through the knee, pull back, come into the upright position. So try not to strain in the shoulders. And then this time, as you come to the upright position, let your hips continue downwards, bringing you down, and then feeling that push up. Now, we've already looked at this in the chair today. It's more obvious, it's clearer perhaps when we're standing. You could imagine, I said about the pinning the ball there, you could imagine that, or you can imagine straddling a ball, like one of these big blue balls you get in gyms, sinking down and feeling yourself being pushed up. And we can use that movement, repeating the movement we did in the chair, rooting down. You let your hips release and drop, and the shoulders follow. Remembering that in that releasing and dropping of your hips, not only are you encouraging this feeling of rooting down, but you're actually helping yourself to remain upright without strain. So rather than getting into a fight with the pull of gravity to kind of pull yourself up, we use the pull of gravity to help us come to an upright position. I'm just going to try new movement using this idea. I'll show you from the side actually. This time, as you come up, as though you're going into the wild goose, but as you go down, push your hips back a little bit so you come over, not too far, and then let your hips come down, come to the upright position. And I'm exaggerating slightly. See the movement. If I get my arms out the way, see the movement in the center of my body. This really is quite exaggerated. I'm throwing my back out of line and everything, but I want you to get a sense for what is happening in this central part of the body. And just letting the arms follow the movement. And the key thing here is that we make use of gravity to help us to become upright. It's called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. It can be done quite big, but it doesn't have to be done with big movements at all. Okay, take care. So practice that exercise, go very carefully with that because it does work the back. But I think it's one of the really important elements in the Tai Chi stances that we take, that we're actually able to make intelligent use of the pull of gravity to bring us to the upright position, rather than this constant feeling that we're having to struggle against the pull of gravity. It's quite a profound change in the body. Now, have 1 foot forwards, keeping the width of your step, and again, getting that feeling of sinking into a leg, and this time as it pushes back, taking that movement forwards or backwards. So again, using that sense of compression, using the pull of gravity to actually produce the energy to move, moving from the ground, drawing the energy from the ground. It takes a lot of the struggle out of simply moving. And if you begin to just raise your toes and your heel, more of the weight goes down through the feet. You become better aligned over one leg. And you can begin to just gently step in. Don't stride out, measure your step as you shout. Good. And then on the other side, we'll go through this very quickly. It's actually one of the key areas, I think, in Tai Chi. It benefits from time and practice. but it's not complicated. So, going forwards and allowing your weight to sink, going backwards and allowing your weight to sink. Feeling that when the weight sinks, there's a response. That what would happen is it would push you up, but in fact, our intention is for it to push us forwards and backwards. So, using the pull of gravity to help us to move, to produce the energy to move, in the same way that a sailor might use the wind to propel the boat. The wind is either going to blow the boat over, or it's going to move it along, depending on how the sails are set. So the very force that might make it difficult for us to move becomes one of the key agents in helping us to move. Raising your toes and your heel. So letting the hips sink helps to make us more stable, but it also is, it's a key part of the process that produces the movement, the energy that helps us to move. Take a few steps through, either forwards or backwards. If you feel a bit wobbly as you bring the foot in, just put the toes down, but also see if you can just get that feeling of your hips dropping down to feel more grounded, but more rooted. And then in the other direction. This is not meant to be an exercise in standing on one leg, although you may find that it helps you to do that. Sometimes you'll see me do this. I'll put my toes down. But what I'm really wanting to do is to get that sense of rooting down. So this has a massive impact on our mobility. What we want to do now is, again, as with some of the other qualities that I mentioned at the start of the class, is to actually let those qualities go into the background. We don't want to lose them. We want to be aware of them in the way that we're aware of our shoes when we're walking down the road. You would realise if one fell off, but we don't want to be constantly thinking about them. So we build the movement up from the ground. This is a really tricky process, and again, your mind, your awareness is a really key part of this. I'm going to do this going forwards, but if you need to do it going backwards because of the space, but ideally going forwards. Have your weight in your back foot, turn. So have your right foot forwards, mirror my movements, turn to your right. Let that swing your arms out a little bit like the wild goose. Forwards, letting your hands drop down and turn to your left, let your arms swing out. Raise your back heel, bring the foot in. Step forwards and do the same thing again. Going forwards, your upper body contracting and expanding, and the foot coming in. This is called dragonfly skims the water. And then stepping back. Going forwards again. And this time, if it feels comfortable and safe for you to do so, bring your foot up. It's not an error if you feel that you're a bit wobbly. It's an opportunity to see, can you just drop your hips a little bit more? It's a tricky exercise, so go carefully. And then going back. Don't strain in your shoulders or your back. Again, feeling that sense of a rising energy coming up through your body as your hips drop back. Letting that move your arms for you. Okay, brilliant. Okay, go back to your chair. Before I go into my chair, just to show you something, if you want to work with that, but you're feeling a bit kind of, it's a bit tricky. It is tricky. We're effectively trying to relax while we're lifting the leg up, which is a tricky thing to do. And the way I would build that up, and the way I have done with exercise, just use something for support. I've got my hand on the wall here, but use a chair and a table, and you could just do this. You know, you could just do one hand, using the other hand for support. And when you get to here and it feels a bit wobbly, make sure you've got the support and just see what happens when you can drop the hip a little bit. Again, I'm exaggerating this. You don't have to go down a long way. It's that feeling within the hip, just allowing gravity to drop through. And just getting used to that idea that rather than taking a posture, making movements that fight against gravity. And I always say that the fight against gravity is one that you're going to lose sooner or later. Again, like the sailor, not fighting the wind, but moving with the wind, you begin to learn how to use gravity. So now this takes us right back to the starting point of allowing our hips to sink, bringing our awareness into the body, so we're aware of how gravity is working through our body and how our body is responding to that. Looking for a posture that allows what we might think of as a free passage for gravity through our body, and feeling the outcome of that, one of which is this rise in energy, but also this sense of being able to move with less strain. And that, again, will actually help to enhance the flow of energy. So letting your hands drop down, our final exercise, bring us back down to this final position, pushing out, releasing tightness in your shoulders and your elbows, bringing the hands around, holding the ball and then bringing them in, and everything just settling down. And then in this position, feeling the push up, embrace tide will return to. One more time. And the hands. Thank you very much, everybody, as always. Thanks for coming along and joining in. And as always, do feel free to contact me if you do have any questions. Bye for now.